you checked your balance. It was fine, enough for groceries, the gas stop, the coffee on the way in. You did the math, it added up, you checked your balance, and you were fine. Then Monday morning came, and there were three $35 charges on your statement for transactions that had already cleared, a total of $105, for a balance that had been positive. Your bank did not make an error. Your bank did exactly what it was designed to do, and they had been doing it deliberately, profitably, and with full knowledge that their own staff considered it illegal for over 2 decades. In April 2001, Wells Fargo changed the order in which it processed your debit card transactions. Before that date, the bank posted them from lowest to highest. After that date, highest to lowest. Every night, before the day's transactions were applied to your account, they were reshuffled, not in the order you made them, largest to smallest, the biggest charge first, then the next, until the account ran dry, and every small transaction that followed triggered its own $35 fee. One overdraft became $4 became $8, a $4 cup of coffee became a $39 cup of coffee. In 2010, after a 2-week trial, a California federal district court ruled that Wells Fargo's practice was fraudulent and unfair. The court's finding on motive was direct. The bank's dominant, indeed sole, motive for choosing high to low posting was to maximize the number of overdrafts and squeeze as much as possible out of what it called its ODRI customers, overdraft and returned item customers. The court ordered $203 million in restitution. The judgment became final following all appeals on April 4, 2016. The bank paid. The court documents show how the system worked in practice. Wells Fargo's algorithm collected every debit card transaction from the day, sorted them largest to smallest, then posted them all at once in that order during the overnight processing cycle. A customer with a $200 balance who made 6 small purchases and one $180 rent payment would have their balance wiped by the rent payment first. Every small purchase that followed, each of which the account could have individually covered, now landed against a negative balance, 6 overdraft fees instead of 1. Wells Fargo settled, and the story would be cleaner if it had stopped there. On September 28, 2022, the CFPB issued a consent order against Regions Bank, a $163 billion institution headquartered in Birmingham, Alabama. The enforcement action documented what the CFPB called authorized positive fees. The mechanism worked like this. You made a debit card purchase at a moment when your account had sufficient funds. The bank authorized the transaction, its own system told the payment network the money was there. You walked away believing the transaction had cleared. What you did not know was that Regions' back office processing would revisit that transaction hours later, after other charges had posted. If the sequence of those later postings, in an order Regions controlled, left insufficient funds when your earlier transaction was finally settled, Regions charged you a $36 overdraft fee on a purchase it had already confirmed you had the money for. The CFPB director's statement was unambiguous. Regions Bank raked in tens of millions of dollars in surprise overdraft fees every year, even after its own staff warned that the bank's practices were illegal. The order required Regions to pay $141 million in consumer redress and a $50 million civil penalty, $191 million total. It was not Regions' first enforcement action. In 2015, the CFPB had already ordered Regions to refund $49 million and pay a $7.5 million fine for charging overdraft fees to customers who had never opted into overdraft coverage at all. 2 enforcement actions, 2 sets of fines. Regions continued the practice between them. A 2016 Pew Research report found that more than 40% of American banks reordered transactions, almost always highest to lowest. Annual overdraft fee revenue across the industry reached an estimated $12.6 billion in 2019. In 2022, Wells Fargo and JP Morgan Chase alone accounted for 1/3 of all overdraft revenue reported by banks with more than $1 billion in assets. This was not the behavior of rogue branches. It was an industry revenue model built on a simple structural fact. The bank controls the posting order. You do not. And most people have no idea the posting order exists. Your available balance, the number you see when you open your banking app, is a snapshot. It shows what the bank knows at that moment, but at the end of each business day, the bank runs a batch processing cycle. Transactions are collected, sorted, and posted according to an order defined in your deposit account agreement, in language that Regions Bank's own employees were documented as unable to explain to customers. That order determines how many overdraft events occur. There's no federal law requiring chronological posting. The sequence is a business decision. You checked your balance because you wanted to feel certain. The number confirmed what you already believed, that you were fine, and the brain filed it as settled. This is not carelessness. It is how the brain processes financial information under conditions it considers normal. In 1979, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky published a paper in Econometrica called Prospect Theory, an analysis of decision under risk. Their central finding was that the brain does not evaluate situations from a neutral baseline. It evaluates them relative to a reference point. And once a reference point is established, once the number said fine, the brain anchors to it. Subsequent information that contradicts the reference point does not automatically update the picture. The brain resists the update. It treats the reference point as real and filters incoming information against it. The bank's reordering happens overnight, between your last balance check and your morning statement. Inside the hours, your brain had already marked as settled. There is a second mechanism working alongside the first. Tally Sherrod at University College London documented what researchers call optimism bias in a 2011 paper in Current Biology. The finding is this: the brain does not update symmetrically on positive and negative information. Good news is absorbed readily. The possibility that something might go wrong is discounted automatically without conscious decision, because the brain defaults to the version of events in which the positive state continues. You checked your balance. It was fine. The brain then did not calculate the probability that the bank's overnight processing cycle would produce 3 additional fees. It assumed continuity. That assumption is not a failure of intelligence. Sherrod showed it is a structural feature of human cognition, the same feature that lets people plan for the future and get out of bed in the morning. The bank's processing cycle runs inside the gap that feature creates. Knowing the names of these two mechanisms does not move the processing cycle. The fees would still be charged, but it does clarify exactly what is being exploited. And it clarifies where the exit is. Call your bank. Tell them you want to turn off overdraft coverage for your debit card and ATM transactions. That is it. Most people have no idea this option exists. The bank is not going to mention it, but it is a standard account setting at every major bank. Wells Fargo calls it Debit Card Overdraft Service. Bank of America calls it Overdraft Protection. Chase calls it Overdraft Assist. Different names, same switch. When it is off, any debit card or ATM transaction that would take your balance below zero is simply declined at the point of sale. No fee, nothing. The bank may tell you a declined card is inconvenient. That is true. A declined transaction at a register is a problem. It is also a $35 problem that costs nothing versus a paid overdraft that costs $35 and often triggers more fees if the negative balance carries into the next day. Inconvenient and expensive are not the same thing. There is one more thing worth knowing. Turning off debit card overdraft coverage does not automatically stop fees on checks, direct debits, or automatic bill payments, rent, utilities, subscriptions. Those are handled differently. For those transactions, you need to ask your bank a separate question. What happens when a direct debit or automatic payment arrives and the balance is insufficient? Can you set the account to decline those rather than pay them into overdraft? Most banks have a setting for this too. Some require you to call. None of them advertise it. 2 separate conversations, both available, neither obvious. You checked your balance. The number was fine. The bank's processing cycle ran at midnight. The transactions were reordered. The fees were charged. That is not what checking your balance is supposed to mean. It is what checking your balance has meant, documented, litigated, and confirmed in federal court at more than 40% of American banks for the better part of 2 decades. Call your bank, ask them to turn it off. The processing cycle runs tonight.